Check. Hey, hey, test. Check one, two. Check. Hey. Check one, two. Test. Check. Test. Hey, hey. Hey, hey. Hey, hey. Check one, two. Test. Test. Check one, two. Check one, two. Test. Hey, hey. Hey, hey. Check one, two. Check one, two. Test. Hey, check. Test. Hey, hey. Check one, two. Test. Hey, hey. Hey, hey. Check one, two. Test. Check. Hey, hey. Good morning. Check one, two. Test. Test. Check. Check one, two, test. Check one, two, test. Check. Hey, hey. Hey, hey. Check one, two. Check one, two, test. Hey, check, test. Check one, two. Test. One, two, check. Hey, hey. Check one, two, test. Test one, two, check. Hey, hey. Hey, hey. Hey, hey. Check one, two. Yes, that you were saying that. Yeah, you said that you're getting the we're gonna yeah, I don't know if it's husband or sometimes for now, but they are setting the next thing. We're gonna sell. Check test one, two. Hey, hey. Check one, two. Test. It's usually below. Oh yeah, I gotta share that screen as well. Do that first. Hey, hey. Check one, two. Just make sure this works. Check one, two. Test. I just sent a request to share screen. Yeah, I'm gonna try to get a longer cable to this camera. Then I'll see what that light. Morning. Yeah, it is. Hey, I was trying to figure out where did my Zoom go? Okay, let's. Check, test, hey, hey. Does that look okay on camera there? Okay. Yeah, I think, I was saw that.
Yes, it was a bit. I was there. I stayed in there. I didn't. They have a hard time. Happy guessing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
My president.
That's exactly how it's going. I mean, that's hard. Yeah, what you do, Paul, you can walk nowhere. No problem. That's not fair. I mean, some responsible, so. Break your soul up. Okay, just checking. There we go. Yeah, no, it's.
Yeah. Listen.
Yeah.
Because Yeah. Well, that's the thing. With your question. Right?
Race to the guys.
Good. So. Now, crazy, right? That's all, yeah. That's all I do. I do a lot with the skates and stuff, so much, but it's easy. Hello. Are you the speaker for today?
Yeah.
I know, I was gonna say, you do look familiar to me. I was thought. What a long time for.
Oh, no, I think you're at the.
And I think you.
Hi, Jennifer. Nice to meet you. You or
Yeah.
you're big Chelsea. I'm ready to go.
Well, good timing. It's the same.
Right, good.
Okay, well, it's all gonna go over my head and I'll take the word for it, but I'll learn my head. I try to learn something every meeting that I'm here, so.
At least we don't live in contact, so we have to find that potential. That's true, right?
Got a couple signs in for.
For accountants, right? Problem. We have a lot of tax jokes, which you'll look, unless you're a tax gets, right?
Over my head.
Exactly, right? The only people are laughing at their tax.
Are you part of the?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, just this group. Just this group. That's the way. Yeah, but I mean, some nice like for me, that's the thing. Context of. So like to look down with it.
If they're trying to do something right, maybe.
Well, I was just reading. No, either induce. Oh, they're buying it, no. They just. 1900 list of. It's from 1900. Wow.
Not actually indigenous.
1900 names.
Oh, that's terrible.
It was a commotion. One of the steps here somewhere. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Last real solutions.
Yeah, that's a red flag right there, yeah.
Wonder. So yeah, that's what we put.
Wow.
It's one.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do pick out.
Yeah.
And then. One day. That was. Okay.
Right? I would say, or I want.
I guess.
Oh, wow. Oh, you don't, when you want to, right, that's what I thought. Okay, it's right, we'll add to the.
The teenagers. Oh, well. Here. I. Oh, yeah. Pardon me. This is the safe spot. Because, yeah, it's a combination. You get these competition, you get next to chairs.
Yeah. Right, yeah.
But he was just so funny. Here's the same person.
Turn on. Which one do you use for that? Yeah. I don't know, that would have been my big gap. I think.
Yeah, the Friday must be where it's at.
Your tax. Or the last thing, I have a son who so fast. And I'm like, not to come to me now.
Pardon me? Only one person could do this. Oh, okay. But I'm assuming. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there is a tax offer, but yes, they're probably not TurboTax, right?
I've seen it with. It's the banks.
Oh, yeah. Well, at least they bought it. I've seen clients do that. It really does.
Yeah. She's on.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I just had a client, we're not filing it. Yeah. It's important. To be fair, it should go here to income reporting, but it's not here when I went H their laws. In H their law, some on the scenario.
Yeah.
And so now just works, I still have to follow. Right? This is the second time in 4 years. Okay, like. Right. Yeah. Assess it 10%. I call.
Yeah, that was something that it's.
No, it's a little bit more. So it's 10% this year. Or 50%. Max on the air. This situation.
Very.
Lovely man, but yes, yeah, he missed it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, he just for life. And so you can hear live. Right, and there's gonna be. But it's it, right? Yeah.
I just want to. Basically, things that I was really.
Yeah.
Yeah, so these are things.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's right.
You missed it though, in your discipline.
Yeah. I've seen it. It seems to be like, I don't know how it's. Like you always buy something from the school. And just put it in that, you know. Yeah. Right. Right, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think today was very fun.
Yeah.
We had kind of pretty about the patient.
Yeah.
Tell you what, there is.
Oh, no, yes, no, now.
Where did you find it? Oh, right, yeah. It's a bit of a journey for.
Hello, yes.
Yeah, they didn't have
It's actually probably yours. Yeah,
Yeah.
which would make sense to do, right?
That's a lot. But yeah. They were very hot and seven. Yeah. So you can't fight when you stay. And you'll lose. Like ultimately. Right? So that's the.
Yeah.
First.
Yeah, yeah.
That's not. I got the already.
Like when you're losing your job, right? But also it's about. Yeah.
And then they're gonna say, well, you back, we have it. And so.
Yeah, spiders, yeah, whatever, yeah. Wow.
So when we hear readers. There's kind of right here. Yeah. Did you walk up there? Park is a bus stop. Squeezing it right along in the rock and sometimes I got a light.
Yeah.
That's one guy. Where are these teaching them? Yeah, I think they're, it must be like eight. If I can see anybody around. Nobody was there. All sorts of ways. I mean, I couldn't figure out. Yeah. I guess, no, maybe they could have been just, maybe they're out at fire. That's easy.
Yeah. So we're being part time now too? No, actually.
You know, like, I know it comes to set mine and two and they. Yeah.
Well,
Fine. Yes. Not this okay. Also, like I see. Oh, no. Okay. These are shirts are off my radar. So like that. Okay, okay. Huh. Is gonna be our presenter today, sorry to be the big. It's got the there, so yeah, I'm just gonna get settled around. 5 minutes. Favor my tax.
Yeah, I thought there's things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do this again for everybody out there. Good morning, everyone, and it's a beautiful day today. Nice to see you all. Okay, we have 60. I don't think we do have 60. I think they got lost like I did this morning. 30 in person and 30 joining us virtually. Welcome to our newest member, Cooper Arnold. And welcome to our guests, Will Erickson and Bajjeet Rule joining us virtually. A reminder to all in-person attendants, please ensure you sign the registration table so that you can get your PD. And a reminder to virtual attendees, please ensure your display name matches your member or registration name. And complete our online polls launched throughout the meeting to ensure you can collect your PD. We'd like to remind our in-person attendees that this is a hybrid meeting. And while it's great to see so many people attending in person, we still have members and guests joining us online. For this reason, out of respect for our virtual guests, we need to use the wireless microphone for all questions for our presenter. This is the only way that our online guests can hear what we are asking or saying. For today's presentation, we ask that you hold off raising your hand or making any comments until after the slide presentation. And just a quick comment, we're going to have a fun bowling night on Thursday, February the 19th at Galaxy Bowl, and we'd like to see you all there. So we'll talk about that a few minutes later. It is my pleasure to introduce our presenter today, Michael Weatherby. Michael joined Manning Elliott in November 2022 as a principal specialist in SR&ED tax credit consulting. Prior to that, he built deep experience in this space through senior roles with Incentive Access Group and BDO Canada LLP, where he worked extensively in SR&ED consulting and advisory services. Beyond his day-to-day practice, Michael has also been actively involved in the innovation ecosystem since 2019, and he has served as a board member with SXSW Pitch Advisory, where he reviews applicants for the SXSW Pitch event, a global platform showcasing startups from top tech schools, incubators, and venture capital networks. Michael holds a Bachelor of Applied Science in Engineering Physics and Electrical Engineering from the University of British Columbia, which gives him a strong technical foundation that's particularly valuable in SR&ED work. And outside of the office, you'll likely find him camping, skiing, biking around Boundary Bay, or if you're lucky, hosting one of his karaoke parties. We're very pleased to have Michael with us today to share his insights. Please join me in welcoming Michael Weatherby. Michael.
Thank you very much. Can you guys hear me all right? Yeah, thanks for having me today. Yep, I've been with Manning Elliott, and I'm based out of the South Surrey office, but I'm downtown and in the Abbotsford office, occasionally in the Burnaby office as I need to be. So we're here today because there's potentially some big changes to the SR&ED program. So just for a show of hands, can I see who's really familiar with the SR&ED program? And show of hands, who would say you haven't looked at the SR&ED program or thought about it in like more than a few years or ever? Okay. So I'll tailor. I'll kind of review some of the basic rules as well and qualify the context. That's great. All right. So bigger refunds for CCPCs and cash refunds for public companies. Exclamation question mark. And the reason for that is that the bill C-15 hasn't passed yet. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, so for the agenda today, why are we here? Modernization of the SR&ED program. And classic CRA changes. What do we know and don't know? When will there be documentation? We'll review what is the SR&ED program, and then talk about some of the risks and issues that might to be aware of, and then opportunities, questions that you might want to ask your clients, etc., and have some discussion. Thank you for the excellent introduction. I think everything was covered there. My background's engineering physics. I've been a SR&ED consultant since 2006, so wide range of companies, all science, heavy industry. Had a company doing LiDAR, plastics injection molding. Half my portfolio has been software through that time, so we have quite a few software clients right now, AI clients, and also aerospace. So one client who's doing AI in aerospace. So lots going on. Quite a varied mixed bag of clients. So if you have any sector specific questions, I'm happy to follow up with you later. Yeah, so the federal budget passed on November 17th, 2025. It was announced the year before. Then it went through the second reading on December 10th, and we're waiting to see what happens. So we'll get more into that. The interesting thing is that it hasn't really been updated. The dollar amounts for SR&ED haven't been updated since before 2006. So the big change is a $3 million to a $6 million expenditure limit for enhanced rates. So the expenditure limit is not a limit on expenditures. It's a limit on how much of your expenditures get the enhanced rate. You can get basically unlimited rebates, tax credits on the regular 15%, but the enhanced rate is 15 plus 20. So at the federal level, it's 35%. So that's what that expenditure limit means. Practically, it means $1 million in cash went to a maximum of $2 million in cash. So if you have any clients, that could be irrelevant, and there's more to that. Taxable capital phase out. So the big thing about the SR&ED program is always meant to grow companies, and once they get big enough, you're meant to wean them off on the cash. And so that used to be 10 to 50 million. Now it's 15 to 75 million. Or a gross revenue on an associated basis, average over 3 years of 15 to 75 million. I'll talk more about that. That's more interesting. Capital expenditures. I have a lot more to say about this. You might have to stop me later. They're added back in. They were taken out in 2013. And then the interesting thing is they're adding them back, but they're only going to give 40% refundability to kind of do some risk mitigation. But basically, if you claim it as a capital expenditure, you get a 100% write-off when you claim it. So that's one of the benefits there. We'll talk more about that. And the really interesting change that I've been waiting for is the eligible Canadian public corporation will be eligible for cash refunds, and this will apply to December 31st, 2025. I'm probably not a lot of you doing public company practice, but maybe you know someone or know companies. So an ECPC must meet 4 requirements, headquartered in Canada, and it can be listed on any designated stock exchange. It must not be controlled indirectly or directly by non-resident persons. So, and basically add up all the stock that's owned by Canadians, has to be more than 50%. And this applies to December 17th, 2025 fiscal year ends, if it goes to third reading, I guess. So will there be a snap election? What's going to happen? I think the odds are right now that if there is an election, the Liberals will probably do okay. So will there be election? Maybe not. There are no new forms. CRA has a seminar, and I kept trying to ask them, and they're like, until there's royal assent, they're not going to change anything. So if you have a public company, and right now you can get $0, the forms you can't even file your tax return to get these changes yet, right? But you might be eligible for them. So we can talk more about that. It'll be interesting to see what happens. So this is an interesting chart. Chart 29 is in the fall budget. And they made a big deal about how oil and gas investment in Canada dropped off the face of the earth in 2015. And you can see those 2 dips there. They are related to the price of oil and gas. It went down to $50 a barrel. But the interesting thing was capital was removed from the SR&ED program in 2013. And then there's a shared use element of that, which a lot of that capital would have fallen under, where if you have 50 to 90% of its time being used for SR&ED, you can claim it over 2 years. So effectively 2015 was when it became fully effective that there was no SR&ED money for capital items. So think big clean tech projects. That's where if they were doing things with getting hydrogen out of the ground or any sort of processing programs where you need big pieces of equipment like bulldozers or you need to build big pilot plants. So they took all the money away from the oil and gas companies or rebates as of 2015. So they're not really talking about that. So putting capital back in is potentially a very good thing. The other interesting point about that is that the 2011 Jenkins report, which recommended making the SR&ED program really, really efficient and taking capital out, the chair of that report was Jenkins, who was the CEO of Open Text, I believe, which was the largest software company in Canada. So software companies get the 55% overhead on salary, so they get 64.5% on labor, and they don't have any material costs. So taking capital of the program affected software companies not at all. So yeah, tech versus heavy industry there. Anyway, simultaneously around that time, there was some changes to the program, and the big push by CRA was to kind of shut down product development. So when I started in 2006 as a SR&ED consultant, we would do everything in the kitchen sink, and then we'd fight it out with the CRA if we had to. But what they've done is they've really shut down the shop floor SR&ED, even though they say that you can still do it. And so that started around 2015 as well. So an example was in about 2019, 2020, I had some window and door manufacturers, industry leading product lines, and they were trying to improve the energy efficiency. The CRA said no, they gave them 0. We claimed 2 people out of 600 employees. But that's kind of the way that it's gone. The bar has been raised. So it's not product development, it's got to be technology development. So that's something to think about with your clients. Like a one-off product development, probably not worth the time and effort to do a SR&ED claim. But if they're building a basis of 10 years of products, or improving their machinery, like developing new machines, that's a higher standard. So something to think about there. The last comment on this slide, the SR&ED program was $4 billion in 2007, and it's $4.5 billion in March 2025. So the average software salary in 2007 was $53,000. In 2025 is $132,000. So the SR&ED program should be $10 billion just to keep pace with where we were at in 2007. So the SR&ED program has been cut in half practically. So when you hear the talk about the Canada's reduced spending, there's also people saying we should take that SR&ED money and we should do these grant programs and let the Liberals choose who to give it to. But you can kind of see that SR&ED's really good at allowing companies to do their own thing. And that's actually what's happened is that money, it's been cut in half and it's been put into these sort of more grant programs so that the government has more choice about where it goes. So there's varying degrees of thought on that. I mean, the key thing is they've doubled the amounts and they're adding capital back in. So they're really good changes from my point of view. Adding the public companies, lots of public companies are spending like $1 million in R&D, and they're going to be able to use that money to continue to fund their R&D, and also, well, I'll get more into that after. So continuing, what do we know and don't know? These changes do apply to December 17th, 2025 and later fiscal year ends. There's no updated tax forms or policies until they get royal assent. So maybe they have them ready and they're going to come out the day after. If there's any tax people in here, that's probably not likely. Expenditure limit is raised. The other aspect is the no information on timing for provinces to match or update their SR&ED policy. So Alberta and Ontario already have public company eligible credits. BC kind of reflects the federal version. So we'll have to wait and see on that. So does anyone care about public companies? Basically, it'll be on an associated basis, and so the interesting thing about the public companies is that to make them be able to partake in the program but phase them out, they've used gross revenue over 3 years, so 15 to 75 million. Because they've done that for the public companies, they're now going to offer that to the CCPCs as well. So if you have any very large CCPC related groups that don't get enhanced SR&ED credits, don't get cash for SR&ED credits because they have too many holdings or taxable capitals over 50 million. If their actual gross revenue in that company, in that associated group, is between 15 to 75 million or less, so at 45 million, they'd be eligible for $1 million in cash credits and at a higher rate. So that's something to look at if you have any large groups that have some R&D companies within their group, but they're not claiming SR&ED because they don't get cash back. Okay, so a little review of what the SR&ED Scientific Research and Experimental Development Program is. So it's been around since 1986, lots of case law. It's the largest government funding program, about 22,000 claims, and 64% of them are less than 4 million. And about 60% of that's actual cash. So it seems big, but the thing, we always win as taxpayers, we always win with the SR&ED program. To get $1 out of SR&ED, even as a CCPC, you have to spend $3 18 months or more ahead of time. So it's stacked in our favor. And I've seen this work over the last 20 years. Whenever there's a downturn in the economy, my clients that are going concern, have good gross revenue, they have a team of engineers, say anywhere from 2 to 10 engineers. Potentially they'd have to lay off half the engineers, but what they do is instead of having 3 engineers doing SR&ED, they'll have 6 or 7 engineers do SR&ED projects for a year or two, basically, cover 50% of their costs. And then 2 years later, they come out swinging with a new product line. And it's a very effective anti-brain drain program, and it's stacked in our favor. If you're a foreign-owned company, there's always chatter about, oh, we're giving tax away to foreign companies, but they have to spend $8 to get $1 out of the program, and they have to do it ahead of time. So it's if you think it's a desert for R&D and innovation in Canada now, if you canceled the SR&ED program, you'd see how unattractive Canada really is. We're kind of handicapped with our regulations and our population density and our provincial regions from the worldwide perspective. And I think the interesting thing with these changes is that we'll have sort of that pre-SR&ED for public company and then post SR&ED for public companies. And so it'll be, you'll be able to see what the effect is. And I'm predicting that it'll be a huge boost in R&D spending, especially with the public companies. I'll mention that in a bit. It's a 35% refundable tax credit for the CCPCs, or it's just a 15% tax credit, non-refundable, so usable against tax 3 years back or 20 years forward. Has to be in Canada, have to be physically located in Canada, and Canadian contractors. And the deadline is 18 months after the fiscal year end. So that's in the tax court. If you're 1 day late, you're done. You can't go back there. So this is the money slide. So if you get nothing else out of this, for CCPCs and ECPCs, potentially, the effective rate in BC is 64% for labor, 41.5% for materials, and 33% for contractors. So if you see this chart, it's $100,000 for labor. If you do the proxy method, so instead of adding up all your overheads, you can do the traditional method if you have a claim with a lot of material expenses and not a lot of salaries, and then we would calculate it both ways. But most people do the proxy method because it's quite generous. You get the 10% BC credit first, and then you get the 35% federal credit. So you end up with equivalent 64%. Materials, its effective rate's 41.5%. You don't get a bump up. And contractors is you spend 100,000, they knock off 20,000 based on the assumption that 20% of that bill is profit margin. And the whole point of the program is to just do the incremental cost, which is funny because before they made that change, I'd always recommend the clients to let your contractor embed all their overhead expenses when they bill you, as opposed to billing you separately for that. So I guess it was a good change, but that's why you get the 33%. Capital, we don't really know exactly what they're going to do. They said they're going to use the same rules as before. There's a bunch of policy papers that were effective up until 2013. So you either get 90% or more if the items use 90% or more for research. So think like a biomedical company that buys a DNA sequencing machine and then they just use it to do their SR&ED. That would be an eligible claim. So those things are like $1 million. If they buy it new or lease it new, they could get 40% effectively back over time once they start paying taxes, because they only get 40% of the 40% in cash. So then there's the shared use. So if they use that machine 50% to 90% of its time in shred, then they can get 25% in year one and 25% in year two. And that's why it's some question marks there. How are they going to do the rules this time around? We'll see. This is non-qualifying corporations. So if you're a big foreign-owned company or a public company at the moment, you just get the tax credit. So if you're not paying taxes, you can't use it, but you can carry it forward. It's still quite generous, 36%. So if you're spending $1 million, you're still getting $360,000 back. Materials 24% and contractors 19%. The caveat being that the contractors drops to 12% if they're outside of BC. Unless you have a permanent establishment in each province, you can't get the expenses for the contractors have to be in that province. Should doing all right here. Capital rules. I already kind of referred to this. There's a bunch of policies. So there's a lease policy, shared use policy, which I mentioned, 50 to 90% shred, and a capital expenditures policy. So the thing is, the intent test has 7 factors. So some types of equipment just qualify for reduction. You don't get credits on it. It raises your risk of a review historically, back in the day. So will it be worth it? It'll depend on what's going on. I think if it's $1 million machine, then you want to do some proactive planning about it. So if you have clients that are in the biotech, biological tech sciences, some agricultural companies are doing like nurseries and stuff like that, where they have specific equipment. So then the question would be, should we buy 2 machines, or should we buy 1 machine and use it between 50 to 90%? Like there could be some modeling there or thinking about how it might be most effective. Interesting thing is perhaps AI server clusters might be eligible. Least costs for computing expenses. And the other interesting thing is, so since they took capital out of the program, you couldn't donate equipment to universities so I had a couple clients that wanted to get a laser sensor, and they were like, we'll just buy it and give it to the university. But that wasn't eligible under SR&ED after 2013, but now it would be again. So that's one thing that companies aren't necessarily aware of. If they make a donation to university as a part of a consortium or for a specific project, they can get the contractor rate. So they can get 33% back. And that would apply, they might be able to get the 41% back actually for capital items going forward. So we'll have to wait and see what they come out with on the specific rules of that because they haven't released anything yet. They just said we're going to use the rules from before mostly. Okay, so the nitty gritty, this is the technology part. What do your clients need to do to get a claim in the door? Like what are the specifics? So you kind of, they phrase it in the why and the how. So the why means it has to be for scientific research, so advancement of knowledge, or experimental development, achieving technological advancement. And so product development, like if your client comes to you with a list of all the new products that they've developed, and those are the bins for their shred projects, they should probably rethink it. It should be more organized around enabling technologies or development of technologies or tools. So like for agriculture, making a bigger seeder might not be the project. That might be the goal, but maybe the project is fine tuning, like developing a seeding system that has a high throughput rate, and they're working on the air compressor part of it. They're trying to control the depth of the seeds or something like that. And then that technology is going to go into a bunch of different types of machines, right? That would be sort of an example where it's more likely to be eligible if it's like a foundational technology going forward. You know, there's some energy companies doing natural gas compression. So machines that last longer, use less energy, but those characteristics are going to be embedded in a bunch of different types of products, as opposed to just one specific product, if that makes sense. And then the how requirement is it's a systematic investigation carried out in the field of science or technology by experiment or analysis. And so that just comes back to, if you can't show CRA what you did, then, you know, they can say no. They can say, oh, this sounds like a great R&D project. We really love what you're doing, but it's not an SR&ED project. So when I work with my clients, the minimum is you can send an email to yourself every 3 months or every 6 months saying what you accomplished and what you hope to accomplish. Most natural documentation in companies does not think about the knowledge gained. It's all very product specific or focused. So since 2015, you've really had to be proactive. So we have 100% success rate up until 2 weeks ago for 3 years. And that was because we took on a small client who made some promises or said they had stuff, but they didn't have the documentation to support it in a review. So when CRA comes out, they're auditing. The first thing they're auditing is your process. How did you decide what was SR&ED and how did you decide what was not SR&ED? So they want to know that you understand what you're doing. And the best way to do that is to have some specific documentation, the absolute minimum. You don't want to document projects that aren't SR&ED. You just want to document the projects that are SR&ED and know how much time you spent on them. But you need to do something. It's way much better. So I usually recommend 4-month snapshots or 6-month snapshots of what you're doing, and then doing some form of proactive data logging. So there's federally T661, and then the provinces all have their specific forms. You've got to write a technical report answering the how and the why questions. There's 3 sections. 242 is what was your technological uncertainty? What was your unknown knowledge? 244 is what did you do this year? And then 246 is, well, what does that mean? What were the results of your work? And then depending on the corporate status, you'll qualify for some varying rates. And then CRA's My Business account has some tools available for small clients to get started on their own. I'm not sure if they're accurate yet. They weren't accurate a year ago, as far as like calculating specified shareholder limitations on the, it's just a very simple spreadsheet tool. This is how we kind of create a costing working paper. Ideally, you would do this as you do the process so that you have something, usually for the reviews, CRA will contact you and say, send us all this information. How did you do your wages? Why did you claim this stuff? To supplement the technical report. That's the first step. And then they'll do a Teams meeting. You'll get a reviewer from anywhere in Canada now. It's all nationally done. So they try and align the sector specialists with the type of project. So it's good to have like a PowerPoint that you can walk through with pictures. And also to have this ahead of time so you can just send it before the meeting. As I said, yeah, the technical report, you know, what scientific or technological uncertainties did you attempt to overcome? This first section, you know, what did you do this year? And then what was the actual advance? What did you learn? So a null result, not learning anything or learning that something doesn't work, is still eligible. So yeah, common issues, poorly filled out technical reports. I'll get more into that in a second. Ineligible expenses, improper stacking. So if you're getting government funding, other government funding, not taking that into account appropriately. So based on the publicly available information, well, 15 to 20% of the claims get audited or reviewed on an annual basis. 6% get adjusted and 4% get denied. So they say on the website, they say 10% are reviewed, but 6% are adjusted and 4% are denied. And so basically, if you have a review and they don't adjust it, they just kind of write that off. So that's where 15 to 20% comes in based on giving your clients a sense of expectation of a review. But if you're a first-time claimant, your odds of getting a review are actually much higher because there's a whole bunch of companies have been claiming for many years and they don't get reviews anymore, or they're in a, as long as they keep filing projects similar to previous projects, they're probably okay. But it kind of shows you like, so for 3 years, we had a 100% record up until like a month ago. And it was like a $10,000 claim for an existing client that was going to do it anyway. So we figured we'd help them, even though we knew it was kind of, and again, product development in the plastics industry. And that's what their diagnosis was, is that it was a routine engineering product development as opposed to a foundational technology. And they didn't have the documentation to show otherwise. So basically, if you know what you're doing and you can present your work appropriately and scope it, you can do quite well. There's good odds of getting it. But there are rules that you need to be aware of, and there are opportunities to structure it. So how can a shred consultant help you or your clients? So I think the one thing is there's lots of companies online saying, oh, we're cheaper and we can get AI to do it. CRA is looking at these reports and they don't like AI because AI does not, it vagifies things. These reports are very small, but they take almost as much time as like prior to 2000, whenever e-filing happened. Like we used to submit 30-page reports, 10-page reports. Now they're 4 pages. And you have like an audience of 5 different people, right? You got to have someone who's a financial person who knows nothing about technology. They need to be able to read it and kind of understand the scale of the costs. Is this a $10,000 project or a $100,000 project? Then you need to have enough technical content that an expert in the field can go, oh yes, I know what that framework is. I know what that technology is. It totally makes sense what they're doing here. Oh, that's a good example, right? So you got to have these nuggets of information for like 5 different types of audience, risk assessors. They are going to move to AI. So on their end, they're going to have AI doing the risk assessment as of April. So we'll see. They haven't been exactly clear about that. I think what'll happen is it'll be very easy or much easier for smaller companies to fill it out. But again, CRA will say, oh yeah, you're eligible for 5,000. They're not going to tell you, oh, but actually you could be eligible for 50,000, right? They're not going to help you do that part. And their AI tools won't help you do that part either, I don't think. So there's lots of them that are out there that aren't proactively helping clients. And so I get this a lot. We can match the price. They're charging 15% as well, but they're showing up at the end of the year and say, what was your technological uncertainty? Oh, and what did you do? What was your advance, right? So how useful is that? And then some of them don't even put it in the forms. They just send it to you guys to deal with, right? So a reputable shred consulting firm should be entering the information into the tax return and passing it back to you. And if your client is paying 15% and that's not happening, they can find a different shred consultant probably who would also provide other value-added services. So what would a shred consultant do? Should develop a strategy and a 3 to 5 year plan. They should be visiting there proactively at least once before the year end through the year to help the client plan and work with their internal shred R&D champion, prepare the technical write-up and the costing working papers, and then help with filing the shred claim and assist in the reviews. So I think for you guys, that would be to insist that if you have a bad experience with the shred consultant, to say, hey, there's other shred consultants out there who for that price will do a better job for you. I think that's but again, some people are in different phases of the company. Cash is king, so that makes sense too. But I think if they're paying our minimum fees for contingency about 7,500. So if they're paying 10,000 or more, they should be getting a full service. If they're down in the $2,000 range, then they're trying to be as efficient as possible, and that's appropriate. But yeah, it's like realtors, there's a wide scale of oh, there's really good ones and there's really bad ones. Typical clients, specialized industries, agricultural technology development, clean tech. So with the changes to the SR&ED program, it should be interesting opportunities for companies to take on unique projects now. I was at Vantech Angel Network event yesterday. There was a guy there doing Minera recycling, I believe. So he's got these containers, so modular container to do composting, and fully modular, right? So that's a good example where if someone wants to build a test unit, there may be quite a bit more money available for them in the near future if they're going to be doing that over a few years. Software, so developing specialized technology, not just IT support. We have a local company here in Abbotsford building some AI-enabled tools and lots of development in AI in the guardrails. So it's very easy to use AI to do something simple, but can you actually make it enterprise level and repeatable and without errors at a high level at scale? That's still a very big challenge. It's not going to be solved with LLMs, I don't think. But they're building the tools to make it easy to use for people. And so there's a lot of work there. Yeah, aerospace, lots of things happening with drones and the defense. So Pacifican has a program coming out right now. Apparently they got like billions of dollars to loan for companies, building armored vehicles and drones and all that kind of stuff. So if you have a product that can be used for military use and for non-military use, so think like a heavy lift drone for agriculture, crop pesticide spraying, right? That could be used for pesticide spraying or carrying supplies to troops at the front line or in the Arctic or something like that. So there's some really big programs coming out on zero interest loans and grants through Pacifican. And then obviously that would also be eligible for SR&ED. Yeah, life sciences, biotech companies. So example was a DNA sequencer or specialized chemistry equipment. They're like $500,000 to $1 million each. And then public companies, yeah. So mining companies that are in their rare earths, clean tech. So if they're going to be building pilot plants, so they're going to be eligible, potentially something big there. Right, almost done. Yeah, so the interesting thing here is that what happens, when does this get approved? So if it doesn't get approved till May, we have a snap election in April. Does CRA start the forms coming out? And then if you have a public company, you got to file by May or December or whatever. But you might not have forms available, or you might not even know if you're eligible for their fundable. So we'll have to see what the timing is. Also, a lot of these companies, you don't want to bank on the money. So if you have any clients that are new filers, if you get a review, they're supposed to be done within 4 months, but the clock stops whenever they're waiting for something from you. So it could be anywhere from 6 to 9 months before they get the money, even if they do get fully approved. So should make sure that your clients are fully financed for the project and that doesn't depend on getting the cash at a certain time, because it's can be quite variable. Yeah, I think for CCPCs, probably the most interesting thing here is if you have any big companies that don't get SR&ED and refundable credits because of their taxable capital over 50 million, they should look at their gross revenue on associated basis and see that maybe if that gets them on board, and if they have like a lot of those types of groups have the small companies doing R&D. Or maybe they should and have some salaries in those small companies now that they could qualify. Yeah, so the ECPCs, the challenge will be proving your ECPC status potentially. So that it's based on the last day of the previous fiscal. So if your ECPC, if your ownership status changes through the year, that's fine. As long as your residency, headquarter, and operations stays in Canada for the full fiscal. But they're saying that as long as they know what the ownership is on the last day of the previous fiscal, they will honor that when you file it. But you should be able to conclusively prove your ownership. If you can't, they might come and say, well, we just don't know, so we can't give you the refundable credits or something like that. The few companies I've spoken to they know who the major shareholders are, so it may not be as much of a problem as it could be, but yeah, currently CCPCs have special guarantees, unlimited adjustments once the cash is handed out. If you're a foreign owned or non-CCPC company, they could assess you and they have 12 months to review you. So I've had 1 or 2 clients in the last 10 years where they got a full refund, like $300,000. And then 10 months later, they had a review and the answer was 0. For the one company, it was because the project had been going on for 10 years and they just decided that the project was over. Or CRA decided from their point of view the project was over. They'd given them about $1 million, which is about sort of the internal limit per project, per company. So yeah, so they had to pay that back and then we had to pay them back our fee, I think it was like 10% or something. So yeah, the BDO partner wasn't thrilled, but it wasn't really, it was out of our control. That was a new change because previously they hadn't come back. So yeah, for ECPCs, the financial reporting, better to just record it once it's received. You never know. Yeah, and then I mentioned this. All right. So I think that gets me through everything. I don't know, does anyone have any questions or yes? Oh, you got to do the microphone. Yeah, there we go. It's coming to you.
Only because I actually started in public practice when this came out. And so I've seen every manifestation on this. One of the things I've always found on clients, most of us deal with small businesses, is do they actually fall into it? And like you said, it's changed again. Is there something we should be looking for our clients to be able to say, hey, listen, I don't do them, but I do now know somebody. Like what are those key flags for us to identify? So like for example, I have a client that does do manufacturing and sends it across the border, unfortunately, for sale. But I don't think they have developed a system, but I don't know. It's just not something that we sort of question when we do year-end reviews. So what do we need to ask?
So I think the key thing is your client like a leader in their field? Do they have proprietary stuff? Like, are they acknowledged as like, wow, this is the best? Is their product development continuing? Do they have like 1 or 2 people in-house who just do R&D? That would be the biggest sign right there. And it doesn't take much. One person full time, like $100,000 gets you $65,000 back, right? I mean, and then even net of fees, it's 50, you can kind of say whatever your labor costs are, you're going to get 50% back net of fees. So, I mean, our approach is if there's over $50,000 in expenditures on a project, which might qualify, we're happy to talk to a client. So, and I would assume most SR&ED consultants would be able to do that. So my approach is to scope it out with them and do like, this is how much money I think you should be able to get back based on what you're telling me. So ask them how much money they're spending, talk a bit about the project and scope it out, right? And then it's a question of whether we're a fit to work together. But, it's better to just give someone a good understanding of what their risk reward might be. But yeah, so for that client, it would be if they got 1 or 2 people full-time engineers or even industry specialists, like what can I say? I do a spectrum. I have a couple of clients where I just show up and I just review the technical reports and they kind of do it on their own. So I actually have one client in the Lower Mainland that like they're building really big machines and super high mechanical forces. And so they're developing special clamping systems and brakes and things like that. And so they have probably, you know, one or two super technical people and then a bunch of like tradespeople. But they're getting, you know, a few $100,000 a year back on their product development. They're a world leader supplier in that area. So I think the key thing is, do they have proprietary stuff? Like, do they sell internationally and they're acknowledged as a leader? Is it more than $50,000? I think is probably where it's very easy to say it's worth talking about. But we're also happy to talk to companies that will be clients in the future or thinking about taking on projects. So, you know, happy to put 20 minutes towards anybody that's, you know, a going concern and has some questions. Does that answer the question, or is there any more?
The only other question I have on that is, let's just say we've just identified somebody. I'm like, oh my God, we should have been sending them to you. How far back can we go?
Oh, okay. So it's 18 months from the fiscal year end. So we have until June 2026 to file December 2025. So we can go back to January 1st. Sorry, no, 2024. Yeah, pardon me. Yeah. 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 So we can go back to January 1st, 2024 today and get that filed in by June. If that makes sense. Yeah.
Sorry, my question is, so when we think of SR&ED, we always think manufacturing along those lines, but a lot of our clients are now in mental health, right? And so there's also SR&ED claims that you can do under mental health. So how are you helping? How do we identify those? Like, I've got a client right now that has developed a program just for neurodiverse children, right? And so we are doing SR&ED claims there.
Yeah, so if they're doing something, so the go back to this slide. So if they're doing work that's publishable, right? I think that's where you would start. So social sciences and humanities research is excluded. There's some categories that are, so pure psychology, mathematics, economics would be excluded. But a good example is like the Canadian banks are the largest SR&ED applicants in Canada. So it, like, making a trading software wouldn't be eligible, but building a trading platform that has to service 100,000 people 20 times a second, and then you build the SR&ED around the technology aspect of the project, as opposed to developing an algorithm that can do something in economics, that wouldn't be eligible, but the computer science aspect of it. So for mental health, delivering the service to clients wouldn't be eligible, but any of the work related to creating, like doing a clinical trial or getting the data necessary to publish, or any time that was required to build a system that gathered specific data, should be eligible under the medical fields. There's a list, there's a document called the 4088, or it's the appendix in the guide to the T661. The appendix 1 or appendix 2 has the list of fields of technology and science. And one of those, I think section 3 or 4, is just all the different fields of medicine that you can list. So one example would be architecture engineering. So building science, you got a couple engineering firms that do that. So architecture is a field of science or technology, right? So I believe probably mental health would be fall in one of those categories.
And does the CRA have the agents, like if they were to come out and audit that? Like, I just see them denying because, oh, you're not in manufacturing.
So
I'm implying.
So my one example of where they came back a year later and canceled the project, they sent a chemical engineering reviewer to a software project. But I, like, looking back on that, it was because they knew they were going to deny it, I think. So because they've nationalized the reviews, there should be better alignment with the reviewers and the projects. But you might get someone from Quebec, right? So Not that that's bad.
No mental health there.
Not that that's bad, but you know, sometimes I feel like the Ontario and Quebec are more competitive. So when they did do that, our software companies that were getting reviews from Ontario reviewers were getting harder reviews than they were used to for the last 10 years. So yeah, you never know. Basically, it's like the Cracker Jack box. You don't know what you're going to get. But the key thing is, are they creating something that's so scientific knowledge or experimental development? So manufacturing would be experimental development. I think healthcare would be scientific knowledge. So probably the metric would be, are you creating something, even if you do keep it secret internally, but are you creating something that you could publish if you wanted to? Right. And then the other thing is to think about SR&ED doesn't judge you on your efficiency. It judges you on the nugget of your advancement or your nugget of scientific knowledge. So example I like to use is, say you want to do an experiment in space. It's going to take you 3 years to get there. So for the first 2 years, you're going to have lots of engineering on the payload package engineering, figuring out how you're going to do the tests in space. A lot of that work might not be R&D in and of itself, just sort of paying contractors to do stuff for you. But all of those costs are direct chain of events to get to the experiment, the 15-minute experiment in space in 3 years. So as long as you can show that linkage, the support activities are eligible expenses. So it's directly engaged. So another example would be shoveling coal into a fire with a manual laborer. They're not doing any R&D, but if they don't do that for the experiment, then it doesn't, it won't happen. So you can claim that expense, right? And so that's the challenge with those kind of projects where they're delivering a new treatment paradigm in the context of providing a service. So the time tracking is usually the challenge for the doctors and scientists.
Thank you. Sorry, one last thing. I just learned that me trying out new AI products is not shreddable.
Yeah, no, the AI has been around for a couple of years now. So every year the bar gets higher. It was the same with like Wi-Fi networks and then cloud computing and all that kind of stuff. Yes, sir.
So my understanding is that the shred has got to be something that's not been done before. But how does that work where if somebody's developed a proprietary system and you have developed something very similar independently, are you still eligible for that shred claim?
So it's in the context of the company. So if someone else has done something, but they're not sharing the details of it, whatever you need to do to replicate that would be eligible, as long as you can show that you're gaining knowledge internally. So, I mean, as a company, you may also be limited by your resources. Like there may be a consultant who's available who can tell you the answer, but they're going to charge you $2 million. And you think you can do it internally for $50,000. So then you could say, well, these were our options and these weren't available to us. So the context of the company is, what didn't you know? What's the standard in the public domain? So if you have a bunch of green engineers who are just new graduates, they don't know how to do motor control. So you send them to a motor control course. That's new to the company, but it's not new. So the start of the project is when you're going beyond sort of the general practitioner's knowledge, what's generally available in the public domain. And so there's some flexibility in that. But the expectation is that you have people qualified in the field doing the work. So pretty much you also write these after the project. So you can kind of, elaborate in your favor, right? Like in the sense that it's better to have really good documentation generated at the beginning of the project, and that's something that we work with clients to do, saying this is what we don't know, and then you establish a start of the project. But when you write it, you can also say you have a better sense of what you didn't know at the end of the year than you do at the beginning of the year, so you can still explain it in that context.
Sounds like part of the successful or part of a successful claim is in the art of the writing, not in the science of the results.
Well, it's in the art of identifying the nugget, right? So if you do a good job of identifying what is your key piece, and that's where that's where we add value is kind of like not wasting people's time because you've been doing this for 20 years. It's like, okay, what did you do? People don't really have to think about it. They just tell me what they did, and I'll ask them, well, what about this? What framework were you using if you're doing software? Where did it break? And then I'll say, okay, kind of sounds to me like this. Would you say that's true? And then it comes out pretty quickly. The focus is on what did you actually do? And I think that's where there was a lot of, like over the last 10 years, there's a lot of these companies that are using AI and stuff and they're obfuscating and you read the reports and like, I have no idea. Like I've been doing this for 20 years. Like I've read some reports from some of the larger online presences and like they're hiring new graduates who haven't been doing shred. And whenever you see someone from that company at these events, it's a different face, right? So it's kind of like the Arthur Murray of shred, I guess. It's like not necessarily experts and deep knowledge of the rules and the history of the program and that sort of thing. So the key thing is not to be vague, is to be specific and focused on what your core technology and what you've learned. And I think that's where people fall down. So that's the art where if you just focus on your product, like, oh, it's faster, it's bigger, it's better, and it's but you read it and you go, well, but what did you actually do? I don't know what you actually did. Did you change the material? Did you change the electronics? And I think that's where most companies fall apart, where they focus on the business language as opposed to what was the core technology, core knowledge that they learned. But it does have an effect. I mean, I would point to oh, sorry. Where did I have it? Yeah, so one more. You have a 1 in 5 chance. So likely if you're just kind of doing your regular thing every 5 years, perhaps you got a chance of getting a review. If you're doing an okay job. For 3 years, we had like 2 reviews. So when I joined Manuel, I had a bunch of experienced shred companies come with me. And then so I'd say 50% of my practice has been brand new claimants. And what we've seen in the first year is that they take the full 2 or 3 months to get approved. I thought I was going to have 5 audits in my second year with Manning Elliott, but I didn't. And so what I think they're doing is they're doing mini reviews internally and not saying that they're doing that. And so then they get approved at the very last minute as filed. So it matters. It really matters on what information you include, and like doing a good job on the technical report is saving companies time and money. So we've had a few dozen claims a year, and we're getting like one of those a review. So much lower than sort of what you would think the standard odds are. So and they just published that in March. So I went back and looked at it. I was like, oh wow, actually, what I do matters. So yeah.
You mentioned I'm in the clean tech industry, and so there's been some development with platforms for carbon credits, et cetera.
For what, sorry?
For carbon credits and
Okay. Yeah.
loads and things like that with electricity on electric vehicles. With the actual expenses, we have contracted employees, and these employees are sometimes or contracts are outside of Canada, so we've never included them.
Right.
But you mentioned that they could be included.
No, they have to be physically located in Canada or BC.
Okay, I thought you had said that they could be, and I was like, okay, write that down.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, they're clear about that. So with expenses outside of Canada, so one of the audits I had was I had a medical company doing research in Canada, and they spent like $2 million with a Chinese company. But when you actually looked at the expense, even though it was like a scientific research company, a lot of the expense was on bringing prototype materials to Canada that they would inject into rats. So materials from outside of Canada are eligible, right? And engineering costs outside of Canada aren't, but they had very unclear invoices. So that's an example where if you are going to be spending money outside of Canada, like if you bring it here, it should be eligible for SR&ED for the material costs, but material improvement costs are eligible. So if you buy something from China, ship it to the States for heat treating, ship it to Eastern Canada for some final machining, and then ship it back to Western Canada, your costs for China, your shipping costs to the US, your costs, even though it's like an engineering cost in the US, it's a material improvement cost. So it's like a freight on board kind of thing. So all the shipping costs and all that material costs would be eligible, even though it's nominally engineering outside of Canada. But actual contractors, they have to have they have to be physical, even if they're a T4 employee, if they leave Canada for 6 months, they're not eligible. So even your T4 employees who are Canadian, if they're working remotely outside of BC, you have to adjust for that. Thank you very much.
Any more questions? Thank you very much, Michael, for an informative discussion, and it was very great having you. It's a little
Oh, thank you so
gift
much.
for you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. She wants to take a picture.
Okay. Where?
Here, in the light. Right there. Okay.
I did the meeting back when, but I haven't done it for 20 years. Thank you, Michael.
So you guys have some.
So, I just have some closing remarks. So if you want to grab your phone.
Yeah, I should take that.
And your coffee cup. It looks like one of mine.
Yeah, it's had it for a while, actually. Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. So our next meeting is Thursday, March 5th, 2026, where we'll hear from Marinder Chahal and Hao Zeng with business valuation tax updates and postmortem pipeline. And as mentioned earlier, we are going to have a social event on Thursday, February 19th at Galaxy Bowl. We don't have to be very good at it. The last time I did any bowling was when my kids were quite young, so the experience is lacking there, but it's just a fun evening. Please come out. There is a sign-up sheet here today, and that's it. Thanks very much for coming. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.